the technical part of our investigation is concluded. The MH17 Boeing most likely was downed by a Ukrainian MiG-29. Having paraphrased the known meme of Sir Robert Owen, the operation to bring down the MH17 flight was probably authorized in Kiev. It is also possible that it was a provocation with the purpose to discredit Russia and to remove her from the new big game in Ukraine. Who started that game and to whose benefit was the MH17 tragedy? That's what the final episode of our inquiry is about. We conducted from the once possibly the most secret facilities in Moscow, the Tagansky Reserve Command and Control Center of the Strategic Air Force. In case of a nuclear war, the command of the strategic bombers bearing the nuclear weapon would be carried out from this bunker. It is here, at a depth of 65 meters, you physically feel the horror which the Third World War would promise to mankind. And nevertheless, there are madmen who, how shall we put it, love the bomb, like General Ripper from the well-known anti-war film Dr. Strangelove. Recently, the most high-ranking NATO officer, Sir Richard Shirreff, published his book called 2017 War with Russia. The main keynote of the book, besides extreme Russophobia, is a mantra which the Western military-industrial complex lives by. Absolutely no defense cuts. Such generals with their war game scenarios and with their hopes for the worst reveal their inner generals of Ripper and try to drive mankind into the nuclear bunker again and want to force us all to love the bomb. Having already used it in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, have they already forgotten that in its fires, not only people burn, but also money? When we began our inquiry, we could not even imagine that in search of the cause of the tragedy, in the case of MH17, and in broader contexts of the war in Donbass, we'll bump into just that, diamonds. It's not a metaphor. We mean diamonds per se, as in minerals. It's an international scandal bigger than the Watergate scandal politically, economically, and morally. To call it corruption would be an unacceptable simplification. But all in good time. In May 2014, the Washington Post reported about Hunter Biden's, son of Joe Biden, US Vice President, appointment as a board member of the Burisma Holding, which is engaged in gas production in Ukraine. And it's fairly safe to assume, the newspaper either sneers or treads carefully, the quote continues, that his appointment was not part of a broader US-led plot to oust Moscow-backed Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and steal all of Ukraine's gas. Adjusted for the Aesopian language, it is exactly just that, the latter. It probably wouldn't be the most logical to assume that Hunter Biden, who in October of the same year was expelled from the US Navy Reserve for cocaine use and became, and still remains, one of Burisma's generals because of his business skills. In America, even some congressmen became indignant, Republicans of course, accusing Obama's administration of corruption. But the White House cut it short. Quote, Hunter Biden is a private citizen and a lawyer. The Vice President does not endorse any particular company and has no involvement with this company that is in Burisma. The Vice President has pushed aggressively for years, both publicly and with groups like the US-Ukraine Business Forum, and privately in meetings with Ukrainian leaders for Ukraine to make every effort to investigate and prosecute corruption in accordance with the rule of law. To none of those who watched the House of Cards series about customs of the political establishment in Washington, that would sound like a jeer or being overly hypocritical. It is simply a PR embodiment of the mottos from Carnegie's self-help manual on how to stop worrying and start living. For example, just laugh, or when I hear that someone criticizes me, I don't even turn my head to look who it is. Or, if the worst comes to the worst, assimilate to a porcelain figurine. Or open an umbrella which will protect you from the rain of criticism. That old chap Carnegie meant that unfair criticism is nowadays of little consequence. It's in Russia where the president holds teleconferences, answers questions, cares to explain something, or discusses in detail even the memes of his opponents. Yet Russia still gets reproached, supposedly for the absence of pluralism. Yet those critics across the pond just open an umbrella. Such is the political culture and the formula. The main thing is to observe the ritual, to issue a tranquilizing comment, and then to take cover under an umbrella and to stop worrying, even if criticism gets stronger and the facts splash under the umbrella, and get over the collar. Soon thereafter, the Center for Research on Globalization published an article about Hunter Biden by Zero Hedge, a well-known American group of bloggers working under a pseudonym, only because they allow themselves criticism, though quite careful, of the US authorities and the system. After all, it's normally acceptable to criticize Russia. But if you do criticize the US, it means that you are an agent of Moscow. Therefore, these critics are hiding under an umbrella, too. Such is democracy in the rain, so to speak. Anyway, the article continued exploring the topic touched by the Washington Post in the article about Hunter Biden, and came to this conclusion. The proxy Ukraine war, just like that in Syria preceding it, is all about energy. According to the authors, Donbass was bombed and shelled for 3 months to cleanse the territory for shale gas drilling and to ensure that the population did not disturb the venture with all its protests. Here in Donbass, one could stop worrying about the protests, about the green, and start living, replacing in months the Russia gas for Europe with a shale gas from Ukraine, which would earn money for those represented by Burisma and Hunter Biden. So the bloggers thought. But it's here where a real detective story begins. The most interesting part is that probably both Hunter Biden and Burisma, and those who are just behind them, just wanted everybody to think about the shale gas. First of all, it would be easy to discredit the theory about the cleansing operation for shale gas production. All this would be dismissed as a conspiracy theory, and anyway, an unlikely one after all. It's neither gold nor diamonds. And secondly, let them think shale gas as long as it would not reveal what Donbass was cleansed for. But that it was a cleansing operation and that it was a battle for resources in a foreign land. Burisma's critics were not mistaken. Only it wasn't a question of shale gas. Remember James Cameron's film Avatar, which is rumored to have been inspired by the story of the planet called Pandora from brothers Strugatsky's novel. At first, the colonizers gathered intelligence on the area and on the tribe in case of an armed conflict. In Donbass, it all began with a geological survey.
Тот сланцевый газ, который был выявлен, пытались выявить на севере области, он не типичный сланцевый газ. Многие считают, что там обыкновенный природный газ, который в определенных условиях концентрируется. И запасы этого газа не такие большие, как предполагалось. То есть это не триллионы кубометров, это гораздо значительно меньше, на порядок ниже эти запасы. На самом деле та разведка, которая велась до войны, все материалы закрыты по ней по результатам этой разведки. Местных геологов к этим результатам не допускались, поэтому вопрос о том, что там на самом деле, какие запасы, какие дебиты скважин получились, они так в области дискуссий находятся и предположений.
Генеральный директор Донбасс геологии, Донец геология называлась в последнее время перед войной, Николай Васильевич Жикаляк, он очень авторитетный человек в этом вопросе, поскольку именно их объединение как раз курировало все эти территории. Вот. Поэтому он прямо заявлял, что все эти разговоры о каких-то запасах сланцевого газа это не более чем спекуляции. То есть это человек-геолог, который проработал там, в тех краях, порядка 40 лет. Их Донбасс геология в свое время изучала все угольные месторождения. Они вместе с Укругелегеологией здесь работали по Донецкой области. И я думаю, что в принципе он за свои слова отвечал. И я знаю его и публикацию, он и как производственник, и как ученый. Вот. И он довольно скептически относился к вот этим вот именно сланцевым месторождениям. Поэтому говорить о перспективах сланцевого газа, понимаете, то есть, как говорится, нельзя.
The information that shale gas wouldn't be much of a business in Donbass, at least big enough for, how shall we put it, Burisma's curators, was available to the very few. But Burisma and a few, let's call them specialists, and certain governments certainly knew that. So, Donetsk geologists are clear. Shale gas production in Donbass has no prospects. But then, what was still hidden in the earth of Donbass? Was that worthy of starting a real war, similar to that started by the hunters from the energy company in the movie Avatar with Pandora's inhabitants? No. It was not the fantastic unobtainium, but the world's last, most carefully guarded geological secret, the deposit of diamonds, which has bewitched, as it was with diamonds since forever, the next hunters, eager and battle-ready, like young Hunter, son of the US Vice President Biden. These hunters are no less cynical and cruel than the colonizers from Cameron's movie, the ones who decided to destroy the natives of Pandora. The hunters in the States learned that there are signs of diamond deposits in Donbass in the mid-2000s. When geological exploration in the region revealed 7 kimberlite manifestations and the prospective sites of fundamental fields of diamonds and mineral satellites were noted, 3 lamproite tubes and 2 kimberlite bodies, which are related to diamondiferous breeds, were revealed. Finally, the moment of truth has come when it became clear that diamonds, after floods, can even be extracted by tray panning in the Kalmius River. Grains of diamonds were even found on the seashore in Mariupol. Geologists found hundreds of crystals of diamonds, and the first samples were sent for an expert assessment to the Crimea, to the Simferopol Institute of Mineral Resources.
Были выявлены в большей степени спутники алмазов в связи как раз с этими самыми кимберлитовыми трубками. И были найдены мелкие алмазы, рассыпные. Алмазы, Приазовский блок большой, и в пределах него находятся кимберлитовые трубки. Начиная от Докучаевска, там где известняки, с тылу, и до Азовского моря.
Якутские геологи создали здесь, в Украине, ученики Соболева, академика Владимир Степанович отдел, Петр Александр Павлович Бобриевич, доктор наук, Геннадий Иванович Смирнов и другая команда. Занимались поисками сначала спутников алмазов, потом рассыпных месторождений, вышли и на коренные объекты, правда не алмазоносные, но тех кимберлитовых пород, которые дают алмазы. Это Пухотская воля на Волыни и Приазовье. По реке там Берда, там по другим речкам размывались древние отложения. И, наконец, когда начали выносить на карту вот эти и спутники, а потом и найденные обломки, которые указывают на алмазы или там включение небольшое, то оказалось, что заалмазило практически все реки, которые дренируют территорию Украины и так далее. Защищены были диссертации, были обоснованы перспективные зоны для поисков алмазов. На 2 участках проводилось и бурение. Вот как раз там, на Волыни и здесь, при Азовье, были выявлены перемещенные кимберлиты, которые показали, что да, действительно здесь были трубки, которые внесут алмаз.
Те трубы классические, которые алмазоносные, в тех участках Южного Донбасса, они, в общем-то, по сути дела, представляют собой перемещенные глыбы, а не корневые трубки. Вокруг них тектонические контакты, это раз. Во-вторых, там очень глубокий эрозионный срез, то есть около 5 километров. То есть при вот таком срезе мы видим отдельные алмазы во вторичных коллекторах, то есть в песчаниках и карбона, и Перми, и в современных.
Вот мы работали на кимберлитовых трубках. Одна трубка называется «Новая Ласпа», вот другая «Надия». Вот мы на них работали с целью картирования их с поверхности, обнаружения, поиска. Эти результаты были продемонстрированы на конференции. Они получили, в общем-то, хорошую положительную оценку.
Все закрыли, архивы куда-то делись, коллекции куда-то исчезли. Это, конечно, трагедия. Мы считаем, что это была трагедия и для тех людей, которые работали, для специалистов, и в целом для страны.
Когда только лишь были найдены кимберлитовые трубки здесь у нас, в Приазовье, к нам сразу приехало 2 представителя фирмы De Beers. Это мировые монополисты по алмазам. 80% добычи, продажи, обработки – это компания De Beers. То, что у нас имеется наличие алмазного окна, это факт, это доказано.
Diamonds are, perhaps, the main fetish for those who worship the super-rich. As Hollywood states, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and diamonds are forever. Yet they are bloodied. As usual, where diamonds are, there's a war. Well, at least that was always the case in Africa. But in Russia, which extracts diamonds in its own land, from its own earth, and is the world's second producer of diamonds, this cult of diamonds has never existed. It's not for diamonds that people died in Russia. The best friends were always the people, never the stones. But the main values, not gold and diamonds per se, but the golden domes of the churches and the diamond fund of Russia as the symbol of its historical and cultural wealth. As the Russian saying goes, God adorns a cursed cow with short horns. So the charging bulls, and who knows, either from Wall Street or from the farm on the Potomac, understood that in Donbass, their horns are not long enough indeed. The Blitzkrieg in the east of Ukraine did not work out. Donbass should not share the fate of the Congo or Sierra Leone, and neither its coal, nor diamonds, nor its destiny should become bloody. But the hunters do not release Ukraine from their embrace. Now Biden Sr. teaches President Poroshenko how to fight the corruption in Ukraine. And isn't that a Trojan horse for an even bigger transnational corruption? But only in a shiny, imported wrapper? Even his son Hunter, as a lawyer representing this wrapper, still remains the watcher in Burisma and in Ukraine. After all, there is plenty to hunt there outside Donbass. There's gold, diamonds too, rare metals, the fertile earth of the former granary of the USSR, where one can grow GMO. And the main thing, of course, is to keep setting Ukraine against Russia. However, a lot of things don't go according to plan. And who knows, perhaps Ukrainians, having woken up and having left an alien avatar, will expel the new hunters and their myrmidons. We hope it's a matter of time. It largely depends on whether they will allow the hunters to finally demoralize them and, like in the Avatar, to bomb the Tree of Souls, which Ukraine, until just recently, shared with Donbass and with Russia, and which still magnificently blossoms in Russia. While in Kiev, as though installed in alien avatars, the youth in the underground shout, "He who does not skip is a Russian." The Moscow Metro carefully stores the images of Ukraine, which not long ago lived with Russia as one family. At Kyivsky Metro station, everything is devoted to the subject of Ukraine's reunion with Russia more than 350 years ago. At the station, there is a fresco, "Festivities in Kiev." On it, the joyful inhabitants of Kiev, women and children in national dress, are observing a dancing girl, the image of Ukraine herself. In the background, you can see the new buildings in Kiev, a monument to Bogdan Khmelnytsky, and Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. Here the methods are used characteristic for the Russian iconography. The sky is represented by gold instead of blue color that gives to pictures the volume, depth, and an internal luminescence. The panel was painted by artists from Kiev. In the central hall, there are frescoes with pictures of life in Ukraine when it was in the union with Russia. If you go from the East End, where there is a transfer to the Ring Line, the first fresco on the left-hand side is a trio of bandurists, and on the opposite pylon, the girls embroidering a portrait of Taras Shevchenko. Then follow the students, the ceramists, the fishermen on Azov, the foremen at the construction site, cotton producers, steel makers, and here are the apples gathering, harvesting, gathering vegetables, greeting the miners with flowers, hello to Donbass, the kindergarten, the Ukrainian dance, grain selectionists, vegetable growers, a veterinarian and cattle breeders, scientists, chemists, a veteran and a vocal school student, rewarding of the champions, mechanics. What frescoes would Ukrainians like to see in the subways of Berlin, Washington, or London, if one assumes that Ukraine will be merited even with a part of the station's lobby? What roles will the hunters assign to them in that world order, which they are trying to achieve? Plumbers, cleaners, or nannies? Or like those natives in America, the incidental ones? To paraphrase Gogol, we want to ask Ukraine, whither are you speeding? Answer us. No answer. But we know this. Ukrainians, like the Russians, like the billions of people worldwide, do not want war. Mankind stockpiled so many nuclear weapons that they could turn our beautiful planet into a barren asteroid. Scientists have already declared that, quite probably, we are the only ones in the universe. We want to ask General Shirov and all others who love the bomb, are you secretly dreaming of suicide and want nothingness to take the reins forever? Cold space in place of all of us? Why then the arts and culture, the science and progress? Why the museums and books, music and cinema? Why did we build churches, give birth to our children, and fly into space? Let's stop the lift, which is speeding down towards a new war. We don't need diamonds, we need peace. There, above us, is not simply better. There is life, there is future. Believe me, there is no person in Russia who would like to spend that future in a bunker. We conclude our MH17 inquiry not only in alarm for the future, but also in the hope of peace, with the sounds of the Ukrainian song Cheremshina, Ramsons or Wild Garlic in UK, which was sung recently in Moscow at the anniversary of the cosmonaut Georgy Mikhailovich Grechko. Cosmonauts and military men and women, Russians and Ukrainians, sang it together. Everybody who was united by love of Russia and Donbass and Ukraine, and by the words of President Putin, who said, Russians and Ukrainians are, in general, one people. As someone once said, Russia is like Pandora from the movie Avatar, only with the missiles and bulldozers, so the aggressors stand no chance. But Russia's main force is not the missiles, but what Dostoevsky described as the universal empathy, which is gained not by a sword, but by the force of our aspirations to unite people. To unite people, not to divide them.
Не слышны в саду даже шорохи, все здесь замерло до утра. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги под Москвой